Welcome to Off Script with Debbie, Season 4, COVID style. I'm really excited about the episode today. It's called Expectations versus Reality. And I don't know about you, but my expectations were huge for 2020, and they kind of went, down the tube. And what do you do with that? What happens when suddenly everything that you planned is not there anymore? What do you happen when reality changes constantly on you? I have an amazing guest. She's a counselor and a coach, and she is going to let you know some practical steps and things that you can do to move forward during this season of reality. This is our reality. So how do we move forward, and how do we do it with the right spirit, the Christ-like spirit, encouraging others, and also making sure we ourselves are healthy as we move forward? I know you're really going to enjoy this. Hello, I am so excited to have my next guest. To be honest, she was the last one I found for my season 4, but she is really the one that I feel is going to speak to all of our hearts. My guest's name is Carrie, I'm going to see if I can say this right, Kosderka-Farrell.
It's actually Kosderka.
Kosderka?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great name.
Thanks.
Because I'm just Debbie Cole, but that's a great name. And she is a former counselor at the Real Life Counseling, a former assistant softball coach at the University of Utah, and then also you're a forerunner on changing the culture of college sports coaching at a collegiate level. And the mostly important, go get her podcast. She has a podcast and it's called Training the Complete Athlete. I think every parent should be on this podcast. Every person should be on this podcast, listening to what she has to say and the athletes that she is interviewing. I've listened to a couple and it's a great podcast. Basically 2020, I don't think I can find one person that says, hey, 2020 is just what I expected. I mean, in the whole world, when have we ever had a pandemic to where nobody knows what the next day holds? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of struggles in that. Well, who better to have than a person who has been an athlete, who has been a coach, and they deal with that all the time. I mean, think of all the little boys out there that think they're going to be the next, quarterback of the Seahawks, and they don't even make it to be a quarterback in college. So there's a lot of things I know that she's going to be able to help us with our emotions, with our thought process, with our minds, just as leaders, and what it's like when our reality doesn't meet our expectations. So welcome, Carrie. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It has been a very chaotic time, and a lot of people are looking for answers of what to do next, and there really isn't a next. And I think that's the biggest problem is there's no finish line. There's no goal to chase right now because we don't know what the finish line is or when it's going to happen. So in my counseling practice, that's one of the biggest things is there's no end result, and people don't know how to do things or get motivated when there's no end result.
I agree with you because I'm a goal setter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I have no goal. I told my husband a while back, I'm just going to quit planning for 2020 because I feel like I put my emotions into planning something and it changes or it leaves. It's not even going to be on the calendar. Sometimes as Christians, we feel like we're not supposed to be disappointed. We're supposed to accept or, whatever God gives us and we move forward. But man, 2020 has hit many of us hard. So what would you say to us? How do we handle our emotions as leaders?
Well, and it is true that, when you go through the list of plans you had in 2020 and think of the events that have been canceled or rescheduled, some people have really long lists. I work with a lot of teenagers and so many of them, didn't get to do graduation or prom or have those big events and weddings being also shifted or not the dream wedding. And so it is hard to have those expectations kind of, to ruin pretty much and that disappointment. But one of the things that I've really seen people do through COVID is everybody is going through the same thing and everybody is going through that disappointment. So it's kind of one of those things of, everybody is having to face this. So I'm not so alone. And as Christians, as just people in general, when we have that sense of being alone, things get way more difficult. I was at Target and my kids are actually in school, physically in school, and we were getting school supplies and he goes, what district are you in? And we're like, well, we go to a private school, so we can go to school. And I go, what year are you? And he goes, I'm a senior. And I said, oh man, I'm really sorry. And he goes, it's okay. he's like, everybody's going through the same thing. So he didn't feel like he was the only one that was going through this. So a lot of it is, I think that's disappeared as COVID has gone on, that we're all in it together, but we still really are. You can look at your friends and say, you are really truly going through the same thing. When does that happen, right? That somebody truly understand it, can be empathetic to what you're going through, because everybody's going through the same thing, right? And so that is one of the ways of saying, hey, we're all in this, we're all facing the disappointment, and life will continue on at some point. We don't know necessarily when, but I look at it as is, what are you going to use your COVID time to do? And I've seen people that have made such great strides during COVID or have set goals. One of my buddies says it's going to be interesting to see what athletes trained and which ones didn't when they come back. So much of it is, how do you find the motivation and still put that goal out there? It may not have an end date, but there's still a goal. Plus, so many of us have gone to, or said to ourselves, I wish I had time to change this. Well, God gave us that time. And now it's almost that we're angry that he gave it to us. In churches, they might have said, we want to build this curriculum. We want to change this. We want to maybe experiment with this. God gave us this time to do it. So we can look at it as an opportunity as opposed to a curse type situation. So when world reconvenes, we can be ready, and we don't have to keep praying that we get a couple weeks off to build something that we've been wanting to build for a lifetime.
Right. And I think, Carrie, I've seen that. My brother remodeled his sanctuary at his church during this time. It worked out great, gave people a job. I've seen people make goals. I've seen people write a book, finish a book they've been writing. I was going to learn how to play the accordion because I have one, and I thought that would be fun, but ended up that didn't happen. But anyways, I have seen people move forward. Like you said, it's been really positive. They've moved forward. But then I've also seen some, they just can't seem to get past the hurdle of life is not what they expected. And
Absolutely.
they're kind of living in that past and the regret, and they can't seem to move. And they're Christian, wonderful people, and even leaders, but they can't move forward. What would you say to someone like that? How do you get them to understand that it may be different, but it can still be good?
Absolutely. And I work a lot with kind of the depression and anxiety cycle. And I talk about mindfulness. Now, to be honest, I don't treat mindfulness like I don't do yoga. I always say I don't have Lucky Bamboo in my office. I have toys and I drink soda. So I'm not really that organic, as one of my clients said. You're not very organic. I'm like, no. So, but when I think about mindfulness, it's truly enjoying being in the present moment, right? And that's also what COVID has given us. Because one of the things we do a lot is, living in the past is where depression comes from. Living in the future is where anxiety is. And we usually we don't want to repeat the past, so we worry about repeating it, and we go in this cycle. We never just stay in the middle. And to be honest, that middle is really hard. You really have to train your brain to say, I'm just going to be in the next 5 minutes. I'm just going to be in the next 10 minutes. As a coach for so long, I was always recruiting 2-3 years ahead. I never got to enjoy just, hey, I'm taking this inning for what it is. But COVID has allowed us to say, I can't have plans. So I can just sit and be present with the people that I can be present with. I can sit and say, I'm going to spend the next hour writing a book or spending time with my family, because there's no deadline. Right. There's no deadline, right? And the thing is one of the biggest things that I find very interesting about believers is we can't truly hand things over to God very easily. We all say that we should. And as true believers, we should say, God, you do have control over my life, but the human condition says, no, I'm going to control it. Right? We always come back to that. And the biggest thing about COVID is we don't have control. Right. And sometimes I wonder, where God is working in this way of saying, okay, you control freaks out there, I'm going to show you that you can still survive, even if I truly do take control. I was talking to one of my former professors, and he's also a pastor. And I said to him, I struggle with, having believers that fully can't hand it over, but talk about how much faith that takes to truly hand it over and say, you got this, right? Yeah. And so that's one of the things I think COVID can allow too, is he really has pure control. There is nothing we can do to fix this, right? We can't end it. We can't do, even with all the things that are going on in the streets right now, we can't end it. So we have to be able to say, I'm going to enjoy the present and truly hand it over to God and know that he's going to make the right choices for whatever is best for us.
And I think, Carrie, that's the truth. I have found for me walking through COVID, I am one of those believers. I truly give God my life. I want him to be in control. He has led me. He has given me opportunities like this show and things that I never dreamed. But I don't think I realized how my schedule and my things I did was my reality. And that was my expectations. And having all that ripped out and suddenly going, okay, now what do I do? I had to come back to that place of trusting God and just saying, you know what, Lord, I don't understand why I'm here right now and why I'm going through this, but I need to know and trust you that you have my back. And I need to look for opportunities to serve you in the midst of this. I found that over and over from friends that have spoken to my life and just from reading different things. The people that are doing the best are those that are looking outward during this time. How can I encourage a friend? How can I drop?
Absolutely.
And that's what I had to kind of come back around and not have it be about, my life has been changed and it's horrible, but more about what can I do to help others? And I think that's what Christ would want us to do now, and say, you know what, now you're on my journey instead of just inviting me on your journey, and I think that is a positive thing. And I think that's been probably one of the best things coming out of COVID is people coming and centering themselves back into what does God have for me in 2020. But one of the things and struggles I've seen with some of our leaders, how do you lead? Because right now, as you know, with everything going on, there are a lot of people we're leading as leaders that have very diverse opinions, very diverse expectations of our future in America.
Yes.
And how do you lead all? Because I know as a coach, you probably had real diverse people on your team.
Yes.
How do you lead? How do you lead diversity?
And that's the thing is, and that's one of the things I love about athletics. It's probably one of the most diverse populations that you can find. I actually, one of my podcasts was with a kiddo and we talked about that when you go and play, the only thing that they care about is if you can play. They don't care, what you believe or what color you are or what. It's like, if you can play, that's the great equalizer. And so sometimes I forget that. And when I come out into, out of my athletic bubble and go, whoa, people are really opinionated and they are going to judge you for a lot of things. And that has become one of the biggest things is people are so angry all the time. And there's actually a book called Love Your Enemy that talks about that because, I have friends that are marriage counselors and you literally have spouses at odds over political beliefs, right? People are unfollowing each other. People are so angry and they're not very empathetic or patient with other people, which is what God asks of us. So we kind of are doing the complete opposite. Now, I get it. Not everybody's a believer, but when, we kind of jump on that bandwagon, we're not really following what God asks of us. Plus, being angry all the time does not bring our mental health into a better position, right? And the real thing is so we argue with somebody about a belief. Okay. The thing is you actually get a hit of dopamine when you think you're right. When I was listening to a book, it's actually by Brant Hansen, his newest book, and I go, oh my gosh, that is why this is all happening. It's dopamine, and because I'm like, oh, Brant, you always know, what's going on in society. So I thought, how do we put dopamine in our brains that comes from a positive place, right? So arguing with your friend does not bring positive to either. It totally divides us. And we went from everybody's in it together to everybody hates each other, right? I think that service thing is a big component. And I think we were really on top of that in the beginning. And I think with leadership is, how can I serve the people around me? And connecting is going to look different, right? So my daughter is in a theater company, and it's a Christian-based theater company. And I spent a lot of time doing sets and with the community. Well, can't do that now, right? Like the show literally got canceled 3 hours before opening because that was the day that the shutdown came. But I have spent hours in their warehouse helping them go through stuff because they're downsizing and I'm with nobody, right? But I get to do all these things that serve the bigger community, right? So that's how I'm looking at, I can't build sets right now, but how can I help them do this that helps them save money, helps them stay in business so they can reach more kiddos. And it may just look different. We all think of services, we're going to have this group of people and we're going to go serve. It just may look different right now. One of my things is, one of my friends is in the ministry and they have a house that they do seminars in and retreats. Wow. I went and did power washing for 4 hours. Nobody was around me, right? But I was able to say, hey, I'm going to make this possible for you to do the ministry and the best way we can through COVID. So we have to look at things differently. As I say, it may not be big groups at the church. It may be hey, how do we get 3 or 4 people that are in our COVID group? You know, we kind of all have COVID groups that we feel safe with. And how do we build that community? And that's what I think is a bonus out of COVID. I know it's awful to think of bonuses, but I've tried to say, what do we take from this experience? And one of the big things coming into COVID that I would talk with some of my friends about is the lack of community. There's such a lack of community in society. People are spending, you know, all the teenagers spend times in their rooms. People don't eat together. People don't do that small groups. And COVID has given us an opportunity to connect on a deeper level because we're stuck together, right?
Right.
And I think people are going to really stick to that in a lot of ways. I hope, right? That they can say, hey, you're my group. And even after COVID, I still want to be in my group. You know, we have a group that we traveled with, and then we didn't see them for a week. And I'm like, when are you coming back? Like, this is awful, you know, because they become more than just, hey, let's have dinner once in a while. They become part of your everyday fabric, which is what we really want community to do. So as leaders, it's how do you make new ways that people connect? How do you help people identify ways to serve that are not in big groups? Because one of the big things too with COVID is we don't have a sense of purpose, right? And one of the, you know, there's 3 things we all need. We need something to believe in, somebody to love, and something to do. Right now, we don't have something to do.
Yeah.
So if we can find ways to help grow the church, you know, do community and have it that it's safe, it just has to be more creative and outside the box.
Right. And I think our leaders are striving to do that. They're trying, they're outside the box, they're on the internet. As one pastor said, but it's hard.
It is.
It's hard because you look at numbers then, how many people are watching me right now? You know, it's just a whole different world. And trying to accept this as their new reality. I heard someone say, well, when we get back to normal, and I've kind of been thinking, what if what you think normal, we may never go back there.
Yeah.
How do we then move forward knowing this is our reality that we didn't expect? I mean, how do we encourage others, encourage leaders that this is our reality? And if you keep thinking we're going to go back to normal, that doesn't look like a possibility. I mean, I think in March we thought, okay, in April. And in April we thought, oh, in June. And then all of a sudden we're like, I never dreamed I'd have to do Zoom for my off script with Debbie. We just thought by August we'd be back, and we're not.
Well, and even the reality of, will the spring bring, you know, normal back? Nobody can guarantee that right now. And so that is the challenge and kind of the excitement of how do we change to work around this in a way that still keeps people together. And it is the pressure of numbers, right? It's the pressure of how many people come to church. You know, when I teach classes, it's how many people come to my class, or how many likes do you get, or how many views do you get? And there's that constant pressure. But the thing is, that is also not what God asks of us. He wants us to connect on a genuine level. But one of the things, going back to how do you get past this, it's kind of like something died. And everybody's like, well, nobody died. Well, the church as we know it may have, right? And so how do you go through the grief process of, wow, who I was as a pastor may never happen again, right? When I retired from athletics, I retired early due to injury. My identity was so in athletics. Pastors are the same way, right? So when that disappears, there is that grief, there is that depression. And so often we don't identify that that's what's going on. And so it is hey, let's go through the grief process. That's how I first ended up in counseling. I was like, why am I depressed? But I had lost the thing I was the most passionate about, right? And that's really difficult. So there's actually a thing called radical acceptance. It's in DBT therapy. And it's one of those things of, this is what is going to happen. And I have to take that on and decide what I'm going to do to move forward, right? Like, as I say, I was injured, I retired, I have chronic pain. I could live in that reality of misery all the time, or I could say, I accept that these are my limits, and what am I going to do with my life here on out? My life was not supposed to go this direction, to be honest. My injury totally changed the direction of my life. And I'm super grateful because I know that these are the gifts God gave me that are much more important than the other way. And right now, I kind of look at it the same way. God has given us these gifts, and maybe it's time to say, okay, I am going to accept that way is over. My identity as a pastor in that fashion is over. But now God is challenging me to reconnect, almost get a clean slate and start a new adventure, right? And so the one thing that God doesn't want for us is to stay in the past forever. Because once again, there's always going to be new challenges. He always puts new challenges, new ways to reach people. You know, we have things ahead of us that we don't even know are coming, that he's probably thinking, you guys are going to love this. And the other thing is humans aren't really patient either. And I see it with my clients all the time that they just want to get that pain over with. They just want it done because nobody likes to be uncomfortable.
No.
Society is not good at uncomfortable, right? And I actually had a client just had this major thing happen that totally changed everything. And I said, it's hard because it was on God's time. And now she goes, yeah, but it was worth it. Even looking back to all the trauma she experienced to get to that point. And it's really re-identified her relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing is, it's that I have to grieve, then I have to accept what the next thing is and what is the exciting challenge that God is putting in front of me. Yeah. And the thing is, pastors, you're going to totally make mistakes. You're going to make a bunch of them. Right. And that's okay, right? Because as I say, God put so many insurance policies in for us to make mistakes, right? He gave us grace. He died on the cross and he gave us free will. He knew we were going to blow it. Right. He never went into this going, you guys are going to be perfect. He was like, how long is it going to be till the first mistake happens? Right.
Fine. I am perfect. And if you come to me, I will
you guys are
through this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why, everybody chasing perfectionism. I'm like, guys,
give it
impossible. Why are you chasing that? Right. I also want to dunk a basketball. I'm 5'3". It's never going to happen. Let it go. Right.
Right.
So are all of those things that going into the next community of what ministry is going to be, it's okay. And like you said, through COVID and through all this, your congregation is going to give you more grace than you ever have in your life because they are so excited to get back to community and have that leader be back present in their life.
And I think it's important right now as leaders. I feel so much of it, and the leaders I talk to and the ministry wives I encourage, I've noticed the difference is those that have been able to grieve and say, okay, that's what was going to be. But they're able to turn it around in their minds and their hearts and say, but God, even though I'm missing out on something that I thought was going to be great, what do you have? I think the ones that are able to make that click and turn and say, what does God have for me? And know that his way is good, his way is perfect. And it's not always about us, but it's about those who are reaching around us. Absolutely. And I had a great example of that. I was supposed to take the dream cruise in Europe this year with my hubby. And that week, we weren't there. And I had already grieved it. It was like I told my husband, I had this sense it wasn't going to happen. That sounds really weird. But I did. And I had already grieved it, moved on. That week, I had a good friend who came to me, and her brother was in the hospital with COVID on a ventilator. And I was able that week to encourage her, talk to her, 6 feet apart. And I think, what if I hadn't been there for her? So I had to go, you know what? I was thinking back about the blessings of COVID. I was here for a friend. And I think those things, my husband and I, another thing is we have met so many neighbors in our neighborhood.
Yep.
Because they're home and we're home. It's been like this wonderful blessing. So I think as leaders, if we can get out of what ministry is, we have our little mindset on what ministry is. It's Sunday, whatever. But ministry is so beyond that. And if we can just be open to whatever God has for us, whether it's at home, whether it's at church, whether it's online, and just be open to it and do our best. Like you said, it's not going to be perfect. And if you watch Off Script with Debbie, you know that. It's not going to be perfect, but we do our best, and then we let God take care of the rest.
Absolutely. And, we were actually in between churches. We had left a church after 6 years. And as I say, growing up Catholic, you don't leave churches. So it's still a really hard process for me. So we've kind of been without church through all this, and that's really bizarre. We are very involved in our church communities. But I think about one of my really good friends, and I would shake my head a lot at her in the beginning, but she would always say, I don't do church. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't do church? But her experiences have not been positive. She goes, I do Jesus. And I was seriously like, you're nuts. But the longer that I have been friends with her, I truly understand that church is everywhere, right? Church is in, hey, I'm reaching out to bring dinner to somebody. As I say, you're volunteering, you're connecting with somebody. There is church in so many facets. And when we're limited to not being in a building and and with our congregation, church can still be present. And I think those communities, I've met so many people that ironically, same. I met this kid on a webinar, and now she's working for me, and I kind of become a mentor, and she's amazing. She lives in Kentucky. I would have never met her if it wasn't this situation. So that's another thing is how can you connect to people that you may not have reached at some point in time? And right now, people are scared and they're confused and they're doubting things. And so this is a time that people are looking for something. So to witness is this is a very logical time to be a witness of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And so it's
agree with
maybe
you.
opportunities that you're like, why would I witness at that point? But step out, be uncomfortable, and go, I'm going to try something different because I might pull somebody in that has been searching for something for so long. And I just happen to be the person that was there to show them what they were looking for.
And I think COVID, for those that were maybe on the edge of searching and maybe, felt like they had it together, but maybe just were on the edge, I think COVID has pushed those people into knowing
Yes.
they need something more.
Yes.
And if we as leaders are scrambling around and living in the past and, mourning that we can't have church in a building and we're struggling with that, or that we have to wear a mask or we don't, if we can just let all that go and say, you know what, right now, I just need to know whoever God places in my life today, whether it's online or walking my block around my house, whoever he places, I am going to be that witness to them. I'm going to let them see Jesus shining through me because I'm on his journey, which for 2020 is a journey through COVID. And we are going to make the best of it. And it might even, I believe, for me personally, I'm a better person having walked through this.
Well, I get up every morning and think, who am I going to meet today? What crazy thing is going to happen? I don't think, oh, another day. Because through COVID, crazy, I have met people in the most random places and been able to have opportunities that I'm always, I always think, how do I still have this opportunity or this connection? And that's the thing is this is a time of opportunity, not a time of sorrow. Amen. And that's the thing is if we can live it in opportunity, that is going to, as I say, be that dopamine filler. That's going to make us want to go and connect. And I had said very early in COVID is so many of us needed breaks. So many of us needed do-over. So many of us needed rest. And God was listening and he gave it to us. Yes. So instead of being angry about it, take it for that full advantage, right? Because how many of us, that's why you go to Lowe's, right? And it's always packed. Everybody gets to do the projects they put off, right? Yeah. Everybody's cleaning out their closets. So, it's all that opportunity of how can I serve God in a new way and reach a new population? That's a big thing too, is I'm in a position now to reach outside of the four walls that my church made.
I guess the Lord had to kick us out of the four walls because we were just stuck there. And I think we have to take this opportunity and we need to just go out and be Jesus in our communities.
Well, and, I always say God sometimes grabs us by the collar and yanks us because we're too stubborn and we don't listen. He has done that to me many a times. And so lots of times, but you still have to go through the morning. It's like, man, I'm really disappointed. I'm sad that I'm leaving this behind, this community and what I know and all my plans. But then you have to go, but now I get to see what he has planned, not what I have planned.
Right. And I think that's important. I had someone one tell me, you can't skip over grief.
Absolutely.
Grief.
You can't.
You say, I can't do that. Nope. But we also, I read in a book, say, don't want to make a monument to our woundedness or to those things that have hurt us. Because then you just keep repeating and going back to that grave and putting flowers on it rather than moving forward in your life saying, okay, God, what do you have for me today?
Yes. Well, Carrie? It is very important to grieve and there's no way around it. But like you said, you don't want to sit, I always say, you don't want to sit in the mud forever because there's too much adventure and too much of what God is bringing to us to sit in the mud and live in the past.
Right. I agree with you, Carrie, totally. Except I do have grandsons that would sit in the mud forever. But
that's what I say. My golden retriever loves sitting in the mud. So, what do you do?
But Carrie, I just want to thank you for being here. I was so excited to have you on this podcast because I know that I struggled through these things and some of the things I didn't even know how to put words to, you have put words to. I did grieve, but I realized I walked through it. And I'm just encouraging others and leaders. I want them to have that too, so that they can be the best they can be, so we can lead people the way Christ would want us to lead them. And so that we can ourselves be that witness out in our communities. So Carrie, you rocked it. And I just want to thank you for being here and being our blessing to our leaders. And I just encourage everyone to go look at your podcast. No, you don't look at them, you read them. No, you listen to them.
Yeah.
Okay, my podcast.
Even if you're not in the world of sports, it's really all about mental health and connection. And that has disappeared so much in the world of sports, and we're trying to give it back.
So her podcast is Training the Complete Athlete, and I'd encourage you to download it now. So Carrie, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, and thank you for reminding us it's going to be okay. We're not alone.
Blessings to all of your listeners, and hopefully they can take on the new adventure.
Amen. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I sure enjoyed Carrie. She just really understands the expectations versus reality. And our reality isn't what any of us expected. But you know what? God was not caught off guard. And he is our reality. He is who we serve, and he is our hope. And when we begin to put our hope in the things of the world, our jobs, finances, our identity, things that we do, we have to come back to Jesus. Jesus is our reality. And I have Hebrews 11:1 as a verse I wanted to leave with you. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. Our reality, what are we hoping for? Jesus Christ. And that is our reality. And it is the evidence of things we cannot see. Remember, we don't know it all, but we serve a Savior who does. He knows it. And I need to rest in that I don't know what's going on for 2020. This has caught us all kind of off guard, but I know someone who does. And I rest in that, and I rest in my hope in him, that he loves me, he loves you, he loves those around you, and he is walking with us through this for his glory. I believe we'll have many testimonies. We'll hear amazing things that have happened in 2020 because of what we've walked through. So through all this, I just want you to remember once again, you are not alone.